Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. So I'm here to give the announcements today and a few other things. The first thing is to note that, as you saw in the newsletter, our church has a number of unfilled roles, and we're looking for people who might want to take them up. These things include such fascinating roles as social media maven, which sounds kind of cool. If you think the bulletin board and art exhibit organizer, and I can see some people here that I think look like they fit the role. Cape Ann Slavery Project participant, and event and fundraiser coordinator. So if anybody feels like they are drawn to any of those roles, you could talk to Reverend Janet or to Holly. Holly's right there. Another thing, you can find out who done it in the most recent murder mystery by Louise Penny, The Madness of Crowds, if you find your way to the book group selection meeting on October 11th at 10 o'clock. Okay? And if you want to arrange for a Zoom link, you can do that too by talking to Pat Cronin. Is Pat here? Pat's back there, yeah. A memorial service will be held for Helen Garland on Sunday, October 9th at 2:30 p.m. And October 9, yeah. Lee Steele has moved to an assisted living facility in Beverly, and you can contact Janet if you want to write her or visit and help ease the transition. Finally, we were deeply saddened to hear about the passing of Rufus Collinson, a friend of the church and a marvelous poet. Among her other contributions to our church, Rufus delighted her with her poetry. She loved Gloucester, I think, in the sights and sounds, and reminded us of the joys of being alive here, being here, and looking. I just wanted to read a brief poem of hers that I was struck by when she read it here. It's called No Cause for Alarm. Every morning, new again. The gulls come out, the news, call out the news. Look, look, look. The light returns. Oh, how I love this way of waking, not to alarm, but to delight. Thank you, Rufus.
Well, good morning. I'm the Reverend Gail Seavey. I'm a member of this church. I'm a retired minister, and I am wanted to welcome you and you out there in the world to the Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church. Now, about 35 years ago, I did an internship to be a minister in Southern California, and there I was taught a ritual by people who are members of the church who belong to the church, but they also belong to their Jewish families, their Jewish ethnic heritage, and brought their Jewish rituals with them. Since then, this ritual has spread kind of organically throughout many UU churches in the country, and I miss it. So I wanted to introduce it to you. It's become part of my Wheel of the Year. And I'm going to tell you the story of the ritual. It's called Tashlik. It's an Eastern European ritual, a folk ritual, and it is associated with Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, which are 10 days of the Jewish High Holy Days. And this is the story. Tonight, and this part's true. Tonight, Rosh Hashanah begins by the blowing of a big ram's horn, the shofar, and as the ram horn blows, this big book of life in heaven is opened to the page where everybody's doings of the last year are written down. The good stuff, the not so good stuff. It's all there. Now, the good thing is you've got 10 days until the end of the holy days with Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, to edit the book. It's kind of in pencil. So, with this ritual, people will walk along the beach or along a river and reflect upon their past year and what they did and what they're proud of, and that wasn't so good. Especially think about broken relationships, broken connections with each other, your community, or even with the earth. And when you think of something, then you reflect upon how you could repair that. Is there a way you could reconnect or repair that broken, frayed connection in the next 10 days? Because that would edit the book. And that good deed would be there instead of the bad one. And when you think of what that deed is, that good deed you could do, you pick up a stone. And you make a pledge on that stone to do that in the next 10 days. And then you throw it in to the river or the ocean. And there's nothing left for you to, except for that intention, for you to do that deed. Today, we will reflect on that with Unitarian Universalist congregations all over the country who will be doing it this week or next week. And hopefully, it'll help all of us think about how we can have good, strong ties to those things that we belong to. May it be so. I'd like to invite you in the spirit to join your hearts and minds in the spirit of worship with these words by Jack Reimer, which is a traditional Rosh Hashanah reading. Now is the time for turning. The leaves are beginning to turn from green to red to orange. The birds are beginning to turn and are heading once more toward the south. The animals are beginning to turn, storing their food for the winter. For leaves, birds, and animals, turning comes instinctively. But for us, turning does not come so easily. It takes an act of will for us to make a turn. It means breaking old habits. It means admitting that we have been wrong, and that's never easy. It means losing face. It means starting all over again. And this is always painful. It means saying, I am sorry. It means recognizing that we have the ability to change. These things are hard to do, but unless we turn, we will be trapped forever in tomorrow's ways. Help us, help one another to turn toward each other, for in isolation there is no life. And now I invite you to rise in body and spirit as we sing number 16 in the gray hymnal, "To Turn Will Be Our Delight." That has organically grew into a UU ritual throughout the world. No one even knows who lit the first chalice in a UU church. But I would like you to join us in the unison affirmation in your order of service as Roger lights. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. And then Roger is going to light the peace candle while we hold in our hearts all those places in the world at war. There's been more things to worry about in northern Syria, but also, of course, we are holding Ukraine in our hearts, praying for peace. So my stories are longer than my sermons, just so you know, not to worry. Okay, so the Jewish people, when most of their traditions were formed, were a tribal people. And quite honestly, I knew nothing about tribal people, right? I mean, I grew up in a suburb, very nuclear family. I had no idea what that meant until Jim and I had the wonderful opportunity to be of service in the Khasi Hills, where there are 10,000 Unitarians. The Khasi Hills are in a tribal state that actually fought to be separate. Like, it would be like if the Blackfeet Reservation of Montana became a separate state. What? In the United States. But this is it, Jim?
Sorry.
This is in India. In the country of India, in the state of Meghalaya, which I was going to tell you. But Jim did go with me, and he took a lot of pictures. There's a picture out in front entry, right, of it. Anyway, so it's in Meghalaya, which means the foothills of the Himalayas. And about more than 100 years ago, the people there, the tribal people, they never were Hindu, they were never Muslim, they were tribal people, they decided they were Unitarian. And they decided because Unitarian sounded to them, well, they were attracted to it anyway, to their idea of their highest divine person was Uble. And people translate as one God, but what it means is the first ancestress. And then they found out that the Unitarian values were very in sync with theirs. One person said to me, we didn't have to change anything except we got rid of superstition. So they like that. When we got there, people automatically, there's 10,000 Unitarians there now in a state the size of Vermont. So way more Unitarians than in Vermont. So when we went there, they automatically started calling us auntie and uncle. And we found out, because we belonged to the Unitarian Universalist Church, they thought of us as belonging to their tribe, the Khasi tribe. And one person even started calling us Mama and Papa, and she still does to this day. It's because Jim taught her how to use the computer, but we also traveled with her a lot. And so what we found out was they think about family very differently than we do. The family was first the tribe, and being Unitarian to them was part of the tribe, but it was also what they called their hut, or kur in Khasi. Their hut was, there were 7 maternal lines from the first ancestor that settled in the Khasi Hills. And so even though they had very modern marriage now, people fell in love and they got married, they still would not marry across, you would not marry anyone in your own kur. It would be like marrying your brother or your sister, even though whole villages would be in one kur, in one clan. And we found this out. You know, people never explain things to you like that. But our main job seemed to be to go from village to village and speak, but there weren't a lot of cars. Most villages just had one van that was kind of like a taxi. And so we would get the taxi to go to the next village, and it would immediately fill up with husbands and fathers. Because it turned out, when you got married, the husband moved to his wife's kur, because it was matrifocal, but he always belonged to his. Matter of fact, he was buried in his own kur or village. And so the van would fill up and we'd be taking people to go visit their family. And we were kind of like the purveyors of family reunion for a month. But we found out how people lived very simply. I have to say, at first, it was a real struggle for me, mostly because there was no plumbing most places. The roads were very rough. It actually was, most places was faster to walk to some place. And when we got to a village, people lived much like if you go to Sturbridge Village, it was just like colonial America. People washed at a pump if they had one, but usually they washed at the river, no matter how far away it was. They had no plumbing, and they had a hearth fire in the kitchen of every house, which was all their heat, all of their cooking, and they gathered around that every night and told stories. I kind of reframed it as camping, and it worked out. But somebody, when we were in India and the rest of India, people would say to us, oh, it's so poor, it's so sad you had to go to such a poor place. But what we realized as we traveled there, it wasn't poor at all. We never saw a hungry person. We never saw a beggar, which you see everywhere else in India. We never saw a homeless person, because your Kur was your family, and you took care of everyone there. There was private property, but there was also much tribal property. And so in a village, let's say everybody would split up the area where it was good to grow rice. And let's say I can't farm the rice anymore because I'm getting too old, I can't do it. And the village council, the Kur council, has one person, usually an elder from each household, and they get together and they would decide, oh, well, this family has lots of young people now, they'll farm that rice and give it for the other family. But they decided everything that way, not just these kind of family matters, but we saw that they decided how to use technology that way, because they wanted to protect their way of life and their land. It was much of it was subsistence farming. And they were very aware that across the world, people were slashing and burning. And they knew the results of that because they themselves had been a slash and burn culture when they, probably 2,000 years ago. And when they settled in the Khasi Hills, they found out they couldn't farm more than 2 seasons that way. They wrecked the earth. So they had learned to treat the land with great respect. They belonged to that land. They developed relationships. This place here would be a sacred forest. That was a sacred tree. These rocks were sacred. But with that, what sacred meant was, well, we can't do a certain kind of hunting in this forest, or we can't cut down these trees because they will not produce and keep the land safe. So they had this relationship, and they made decisions about technology based on that. It turned out that's why they had such bad roads and so few cars. They had decided no airport, not one airport, not one train. But they did take some technologies. It wasn't like they were against technology. They understood that they had to have the best science with the rest of the world to save the earth everywhere. They understood that what happened in America affected them. They had excellent education. So they had satellite dishes. We helped them raise money for a big satellite dish because they wanted computers to be able to have excellent education, drawing from the world, and they love cell phones because they belong to each other. Okay. So when we came home, Jim and I were so inspired by these people that lived so simply, and yet joyfully. They never felt that they had sacrificed a thing. They had fought guerrilla warfare in the 60s and 70s to be able to live this way. And we found how difficult it was in our culture to live simply. We have had to challenge so many of our assumptions to be able to do so. And I'm sure you have all wondered how much you belong to community and earth and what that would mean for all of us to deepen those relationships. May it be so. Do not know this word. Now I'd like to invite us into a time of, thinking about others, and beginning with responsive reading, number 468 in our hymnal, We Need One Another. And I'm going to invite you to read the parts in italics. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted.
We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair in temptation and need to be recalled to our best selves again.
We need one another when we will accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success when we look for someone to share our triumphs.
We need one another in the hour of need when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us.
I invite you to join your hearts and minds in the spirit of prayer, and the prayer will be followed by a moment of silent meditation. Interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. Strengthen our relationships to our neighbors, our families, our friends. May we help one another to be able to give help and ask for help when needed. Help us to see how we can strengthen our ties to all sentient beings, those we know and those we do not, those we see and those we can only imagine. Help us to reweave our ties to this earth we walk upon, the air we breathe and the ocean we depend upon. Blessed be, and amen.
Our first reading today is from a Boston Globe article in which Ivan Selinger interviews Douglas Rushkoff, a professor of media theory and digital economics at CUNY Queens, and author of Survival of the Richest, Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires. So in this little play, I'm going to be the interviewer and be the interviewee, Douglas Rushkoff. Yeah. Gail will be the Rushkoff character. In your book, you contend that there's a common outlook among wealthy investment bankers building doomsday bunkers, Mark Zuckerberg constructing the metaverse, Ray Kurzweil aspiring to upload his mind into a supercomputer, it's true, and Elon Musk preparing to colonize Mars. What is a perspective they share?
They believe they can earn enough money to insulate themselves from the problems they are creating by earning money in this way. As if they can somehow build a car that drives fast enough to escape from its own exhaust. Every one of these guys has what business people call an exit strategy. Take the money and leave your shareholders holding the bag. About life itself. They think civilization is inevitably doomed, but that their money and technology will let them escape. Whether they go to a bunker, to space, or the metaverse, they're not bringing us along, at least not as anything but servants. Even more tragically, many of us have internalized their self-centered worldview. I call this set of beliefs the mindset, a fatalist drive to rise above and separate from the rest of humanity.
Where does the mindset come from?
The mindset comes from two main tributaries. One is empirical science. In the late Middle Ages and early Renaissance, Francis Bacon and his contemporaries looked at nature as scary, dark, feminine, and unpredictable. They wanted to lock things down and make reality more predictable. They developed a sterile understanding of the world that's led to today's super reductive scientific view of human beings. The second tributary is capitalism. I'm not a Marxist, but you can't look at capitalism without realizing it was invented to keep the rich rich, not help an economy flourish or make people happy. Capitalism led to the idea that individuals need to separate themselves from their communities and get rich enough to not belong to the masses of working idiots.
Why do you call your alternative approach Team Human?
Team Human, yeah. We have to accept the premise that we all get there or none of us get there. There's no way to insulate yourself from what happens to the rest of humanity. If there is a massive climate change and hundreds of millions of refugees, there's no wall you can put between Texas and Mexico that will stop that crisis. The same things you would do to prepare for a disaster are the things that will limit the possibility of there being one. You know, doing things locally, helping your friends and others, and having a sense of mutuality. Then there will be people to help you. I'm asking people to spend less. If you spend less, you can earn less, meet other people, and stop thinking we owe something to an obsolete economic model. You don't have to get the most updated iPhone. So ends our reading. So if you want to spend less, give more. We are totally self-supporting, mutual community. Thank you.